So far, so good.
Very good. Good to hear. So today we're going to look at design, build, commissioning. We have been talking about the kind of impact facility managers and facility management professionals should have on the built environment. We're talking about the value of facility management to the built environment and to the corporate world in terms of corporate existence of our organizations, how FMs are strategic enablers of success, owning a very critical lever of the profitability equation. We also have back-end issues with problems created during design, building, or construction processes and commissioning processes that lead to, difficult operations and maintenance regimes for us, which we feel that with more knowledge on our part and awareness on the part of other stakeholders, we will be able to fix and have better facilities to manage. Our understanding of life cycle costs from our finance costs, from our procurement costs, will crystallize in here because you really can think of property value, assets, long-term value, if you are looking at it from the end after it's been delivered. So what are those things we should consider during the planning and construction phases? And how do we as facility managers, because we keep saying the FM should be involved, the FM should be involved, but what does the FM actually know to be involved in doing at that stage, at these other stages? Because if somebody brings you into a discussion and you don't have anything to contribute to that discussion, the next time they're having that discussion, they will not call you, or you have something really unresearched, unrefined, poorly analyzed, and which puts you in the wrong end of facts. At the end of the day, you'll be seen as an ignorant person, unable to contribute, and therefore not worthy of being invited to that table where decisions are being made before facilities are fully developed. And so after today's class, the expectation is that we'll all be able to know at every stage what our contributions should be, know how to engage with the construction design teams, construction teams, and the commissioning and handover team so that we will be ready to receive properties that are well developed, but which we have influenced such that we've not been sidelined or pushed back. And so when we talk about we have not been invited, we're not been invited, this is the gap. We're not been invited because we don't know what to contribute. We have not shown or created our ability to add value in earlier stages. So that's why we are not being invited. The moment we start crafting out analysis, crafting out documentation that shows the value we bring on board, then we will become a regular feature in the discussions of new developments. So that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the entire life cycle of a building, how it starts from conception and all the way to how it ends to delivery. But that's when a new life starts, right? So how do you get that new life of operations and maintenance running without hitches, least possible cost, at the least complications, with all the compliance that needs to go with it, and enough information to be able to manage it effectively? How do you get to that point where you can now say, I'm managing seamlessly? There's no information loss, there's no extra cost to get around the gaps that were created during design, planning, design, construction phases. This is typically what a facility will go through. It will be planned, it will be designed, constructed, to be tested, to be commissioned, then hand over for facility management to help the users derive value from it. So I'm going to go each of these phases, or points of the development cycle, And then we're going to talk about what happens at each phase. We will not talk about what are the outputs or who are the players in each of these phases. So what happens or what activities, who are the players, and what documentation are produced from each of these phases. It's when we talk about what happens and the roles of each stakeholders that we'll begin to understand exactly where the FM comes in at every stage of a development of a facility. Let's start with planning. Planning typically is the point at which a decision is being considered or made to go ahead with a development. This is where the seeds are planted from or ideas to reality. Some commitment is now being made as to making progress with bringing to reality that idea. But that idea of a new facility, whether it's renovated, whether it's brand new from scratch, would have started from a need or a problem or an opportunity. So there must have been a need, to grow, a need to comply with certain regulations or new laws, a need to respond to customer preferences that are changing, and then a new facility or a remodeled facility is born. Or there is a problem that needs to be solved. There's a challenge. People are trying to cross from one point to the other, and the current route to go to the other point is a long way off. So there's a problem, there's a challenge, there's a hiccup. We need to build a bridge. Children are going to school and there are no hostels in the campus. They come from very far to the hostel. That could be both a challenge for the school delivery of academic programs, as well as an opportunity for an investor to come in and build, or even the school trying to build for hostels, right? So both the challenges and the opportunities are there. So it's a need, a challenge, or an opportunity that needs to be filled, that leads to the idea for a new facility. Okay, so let's build a hostel, let's build a new lecture theater, let's build a faculty building for administration, let's build a new hospital, let's set up a market, a retail mall, let's build a school, just name it. It's born out of one of these three, and then someone decides to invest in it. Now, the person who decides to invest in it is not going to make all the decisions. It's going to come up with a team to plan how to articulate a solution to the problem that he has seen, how to articulate a new resource or structure that will fill the gap that he has seen in the opportunity or need that needs to be filled, right? And so at this point, the key decision maker is the owner or the investor. In some cases, it's also the developer. In other cases, it's a mixed blend of high-level decision makers. They're deciding on how big. They're deciding on how this new facility is going to meet the original intent for which it was thought of, or the idea was carved, right? At this point, questions like how big should we build, how many people should we plan for, how do we plan in phases, or do we build outright the whole thing, what kind of sites are available, what kind of budgets can we have, and so on and so forth. A lot of questions around the concepts, around the how the facility is going to fit into the ecosystem both geographically, economically, and whatever consideration of feasibility is being analyzed and discussed. What does the FM have to contribute at this point? We expect the facility management consultant to be the first consultant engaged by the owner, right? So that consultant could be an in-house FM who's experienced that owner, experienced that industry, experienced that geographical location, and has a sense of understanding of the documentation that led to Let's Build. Also, that person already has a history with similar users that we're building for, has a sense of demographics, the male-female ratios, the age demographics, and has a sense of other demographics like social strata, religious backgrounds, and cultural orientations of people who this facility is being built to serve. What comes out as output from the planning stage, typically what we call in professional circles a brief, right? So a brief is a document that spells out the owner's intention, that spells out the scope and size to be looked at, that gives an indication on the dimensions of quality, dimensions of scope, dimensions of timelines, all high level. Concept ideas that a design team can work with also comes out of this, right? So that's what happens at the planning stage. And so the FM is supposed to be someone who understands the impact of the climate and weather on types of buildings in this area, people that use the building, their expectations, challenges with operations and maintenance that can be factored in when looking at scope, scale, and size, for example, and so many inputs that comes in here. When we move the brief into the design stage, the design team made up of architects and engineers of different trades and professions work with the FM to come up with a program. So programming is the first thing that happens. So they take out the brief and they work on the program. What's the program? In the program, you identify all the individual or roles or positions that facility will serve. What will be their role within the building or facility, and what kind of spaces and services they will need. So you could hypothetically create from standards and benchmarks once you know the numbers you're trying to cater for every category of people. And why the FM is very critical in this stage is because when design teams don't have FMs working with them, they end up creating the whole edifice, cater for everybody, but they forget to provide adequately for the team that is going to manage and operate the facility. That can become a big shortfall. And then they may oversight certain maintainability considerations and sustainability considerations that will become a nightmare for the FM. For example, access to do certain inspections might not be factored in. They may build certain areas with all those conduiting and stuff as part of the design without considering how people would actually maintain them. They may even not have full grasp of degradation curves of various material choices they are choosing to put into the facility, right? And sometimes they may even have a misjudgment of development phases. What aspects of this facility can we put out first and then make it usable for the users and then move on to produce more aspects in phases of this facility. Without the FM there, you could make a dysfunctional first phase. It is with the FM we can understand what is the minimum requirement for us to even function as an organization, providing that we're being provided the space for, right? So the design team go into programming with a full understanding of what this place looks like when it is fully ready. It is the FM that's supposed to contribute that. The full understanding of what each role is trying to achieve, how much space each role requires, and how much resources and services each role requires, right? They contribute that. They contribute everything up to degradation. You know, I've seen plumbing systems, electrical systems degrade over 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, right? So I can contribute those kind of information to the design team to ensure that they are able to capture exactly what it takes to make the right decisions around design materials, design work methods, and so on and so forth. So from planning, I get the brief, I go into design, and then I produce a set of design drawings. All right. So design drawings range from concept drawings to actual design drawings, dimension drawings that explains everything that needs to be done. So I get design drawings from this stage. I also get a set of bills of quantities from the design stage. Consultants from the QS consultants produce bills of quantities using the design to create these bills of quantities. And then I get other designs from the construction team, design teams, structural, mechanical, electrical, and so on and so forth. So basically what I'm doing is I'm working from the brief to convert the brief into a set of visual and statistical tables. So visual drawings and images that explains what the brief is asking for, as well as spreadsheets of bills of quantities and so on and so forth. I'm going to take a little break here. I'll continue with design phase once I come. All right, sorry, that was actually a hurried break because of a power disruption. I hope you hear me okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great, great. So from design stage, you're coming out with a set of design drawings. You're coming out with bills of quantities. You're also coming out with engineering drawings. So design drawings broken down into architectural, which we call design drawings, but of course, both the mechanical, electrical, civil, structural, plumbing, and the rest are all also design drawings, because at this stage, they are representing what's been given to them in the brief and agreed in the design among the design team into those. And from those visuals, the quantity surveyors extracts material schedules, specifications, work methods to develop the bills of quantities. So these are standard outputs from this stage. And then we also have a contract for construction developed and released out of this design stage. So if you have a contractor who's probably a bidding documentation, because now you have the full information of what needs to be built, constructed and put in place. You now have contract documents. So let me recap that. From the planning stage, you come up with a brief. From design stage, you come up with a set of drawings, architectural, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and so on and so forth. And then you get into the contract document and the bills of quantities. Okay. Then we move into the construction stage. From the construction stage, we'll have the design drawings being interpreted. And that means someone is trying to convert those drawings into construction drawings, where you have detailing, you have blowouts, you have work method, illustrations, materials, explanations, details on dimensions. So construction drawings are a different set of drawings. They are used to implement design, right? So if you get a design drawing, you blow it out and create, working documents called construction drawings. So that's what you do at the construction stage, right? And at this stage, you are actually building. You are looking at the drawings. You're looking at the bills of quantities. You're looking at the contractual documents that have been signed with the contractor. and you are actually building, okay? The expectation at this stage is that all the planning objectives and the high-level strategies for that project have been carefully encapsulated in the set of documentations that came out of design. What that means is that we expect 100% compliance in terms of bringing to being exactly what's been designed and scoped. So one of the things you want to watch out for as a building professional is variation. That's why a management of change process is built into the contractual document deliberately, so that changes don't crop up left, right, and center to obstruct the flow of the construction. Whether it's from all kinds of stakeholders, whoever is bringing up a change must go through a certain analytical process, step-by-step analysis for impact of that change, why we need to have that change, and a series of approval that needs to take place. Now, that is one of the goals of construction, building with exactness what has been designed, right? But of course, that is not always the case. So the facility manager's involvement in the construction stage is not to become the expert in construction who tells the construction team what to do. No, that's not your job. You don't control the construction team and tell them what to do. Your job is to watch out for, one, variations and changes that make sense as approved using the management of change process built into the contractual documents. Each of those changes and variations should be adequately documented. So at this stage, you are seeing to it that design mechanical, design electrical, design structural, design architectural drawings, and plumbing drawings are always being adjusted every time you have a need to make a change, right? The reason all of these changes need to be carefully controlled, documented, and all drawings and bills of quantities readjusted to capture them is because as facility manager, you need to be able to have this information up to date when you are managing the facility. Because if you don't, you will end up with a property you don't understand, that you don't know. So you'll be managing something you don't know. You can't manage what you don't know. You can't manage it well. So we've talked about watching out for variations, documenting changes, adjusting and revisiting all your drawings to get them right? And then ensuring that every time a new system is installed, a new a unit is completed, the proper processes for initiating their transition into O&M, which we're going to be talking about, testing and commissioning, have adequate templates for them. The templates for testing and commissioning are actually set up during construction. And then there are so many things that happens during construction. Because a lot of things are going to be buried, covered, screeded in, the FM needs to at least be present to visually see. It doesn't mean you have to be on site round the clock doing a project. No, it doesn't mean that. It simply means that you need to come to the project at least once in a week to observe, make notes, and at least participate in site meetings where especially changes are being discussed. Because that is when you get insights and heads up as to the kind of change that you should expect to see in documentation. So the FM has a huge role during construction that you know, if you don't play that role, you cannot imagine what's buried up for you to come and manage. Then you get into testing. Output from the construction stage are a set of construction drawings, working drawings or workshop drawings as we call them, and then a set of as-built drawings. Now, the design drawings have gone through some manipulations during the construction drawing stages for the second set of drawings. Those are drawings that you amend one to get the other. So you amend or expand or blow out the design drawings to get the construction drawings. But when it comes to the third set of drawings, the as-built drawings, you actually are supposed to measure. You're actually supposed to measure and represent what is actually on ground. So if you have a pipe running along within a certain wall, based on the design, it was supposed to run at 900 millimeters from the ground or from the finished floor level. And now that pipe is running at 600 millimeters from finished floor level. It's in as-built drawings, you indicate that, right? So you may reference the construction drawings and design drawings in developing the as-built drawings, but you actually need to measure and verify. So the team producing this set of drawings need to, you need to have an input to be sure that you can witness that's exactly what is actual that is being drawn into these as-built drawings. And then there's supposed to be another output, the as-built bills of quantities. Specification changes that have been, back and forth with approvals and documentations, no problem, they've all been done. Then we now need to document the final as-built bills of quantities. All material schedules, specifications of various materials and equipment that were installed, all of them come out of this stage. It is at this stage you also have to receive the asset register for the facility, because as they're installing assets, they have all those wavy records that have serial numbers and model numbers, capacities, of course, and cost. But the way bills contain information that is relevant to you that does not include cost. Cost might be involved with bills of quantities and invoices, right? But you're interested in the wavy documentation. You're interested in those manuals that come with assets that are installed. So you can have an asset register and an operations and maintenance manual. It happens at the construction stage. They are all supposed to be developed and made ready. Even the templates for testing and templates for commissioning are all developed during the construction phase. Construction is not just the physical structure that has been delivered. The documentation is 50% of that delivery process. All of this goes into testing. Because you now have testing templates, testing is checking out for functionality, that the assets work. If there's a stairwell, it can lead me down or up. If there is a electrical system that provides lights, I can put it on and I will see lights, and I will get to be able to see that works. Okay, all of that happens at testing stage. All right, and because I'm doing testing, as a facility manager, think about testing in terms of your medical tests, the typical lab tests you do when you go to the hospital to do a lab test, right? When the result comes out, you see that result is entered into a template. The template has a list of functionalities, the tests performed for each of those functionality, the standard measure or the metric for healthy states for that particular metric for male and female, and then your results, and then an interpretation of that result. That's typically where the testing template should be. So it writes down what we call operating parameters for everything. And for each operating parameter, it specifies the range that is acceptable, that when it is within this range, it is okay. Temperature ranges, pressure, resistance or physical strength for structural elements, so many things. It is that I need to have for my testing. And when I come to do the testing, I have an equipment, a gauge, a test kit to test that particular component or asset and take a reading real time. And that reading is compared to the range that has been predefined from the design and the construction stage, especially at the construction stage, for that equipment or asset to be functioning in order. And then an interpretation that says it is within range, it's out of range, it's a snag that needs to be fixed, and so on and so forth. That is testing. So there's a documentation that comes out of it. Why should the FM be here? The FM should be here because there's so much documentation that comes out of this stage that will help you to manage your warranties, that will help you to manage equipment history. This is like your baseline equipment or asset history. This is your first level history, your baseline, on which you will build the history of all your activities over time. This is how you receive them. So that documentation is very key. You must witness it. You're not the central player here, but you must witness it as a consultant or as an in-house facility manager. And then commissioning. Commissioning is a different process for a different objective. Commissioning is not testing for functionality. It is checking for adequacy. So I'm going to go all the way back to planning and the programming done during design to get my template for commissioning. An elevator may move up and down, does not make noise, it's not getting heated up, it's not vibrating beyond above range. It passed testing. But our original intention is that this elevator should be able to carry 12 people in one trip, so that when we now know the volume, we've estimated the volume of traffic in our building, like with 4 elevators, we should be able to manage 12 people traveling at once at peak. The elevator should be able to handle well. That is what I'm commissioning for. Adequacy. Can this handle the traffic? That it works is testing. They can handle the traffic is commissioning. And this applies to every aspect of the facility. And then you get to handover. Handover what, ladies and gentlemen? Documentation. Documentation. Don't just hand over keys to facilities. No. Documentation. It's still the documentation that I've been talking about, pulling out from planning to design to construction to testing and commissioning. All of it crystallizes into a series of organized folders that is handed over with keys. This is where you take over. You make sure at the handover stage, all compliance issues are sorted out, all standards are verified to have been met, all snags have been fixed. Before you even get out of construction, you have started dealing with snags. Users that are moving into the facility, you have a survey, a post-occupancy survey. You have a lot of cleaning to do. You have a lot of relocation and space management to do. All of that happens before you get into steady state facility management. I see a question in the chat. What's the difference between the project manager and the facility manager? This whole cycle is directly managed by a project manager. But the project manager is an ad hoc personnel because he deals with that project and he moves. And that project becomes a facility management monkey to deal with. So the FM in getting involved from planning all the way down to commissioning is not just an observer. Of course, it's not a driver, but it's not just an observer, but it's a critical stakeholder who is making inputs. In fact, the expectation is that owners of properties at the planning stage should designate the facility manager as the owner's representative, not the project manager. The project manager works as owner's representative, but is working with an external team. And both himself and that external team are going to be eventually external. The final person that is going to have this project delivered and managed on behalf of the owner is the facility manager. So if you're going to put in rank who should rank closest to the owner, it should be the facility manager. The history from the entire project will be in this person's hands as custodian. In fact, all the owner knows about the property should be at the disposal of the facility manager or the consultant who is in charge of this project. And that cycle will continue every time you have a new development. When an asset reaches useful life and you need to demolish or sell and do a new one, that cycle continues. This is the beauty of the development cycle. The FM has a role to play at every stage if he knows what he's doing. And this process I just described is called operational readiness. Operational readiness. When you start a development, starting from that planning stage, your end goal should not just be the assets being built. Oh, we've done it, it's down here. No, that should not be your end goal. Your end goal should be that the asset is built and that it can deliver on what it is being built for. That is operational readiness. The FM is responsible for operational readiness. Operational readiness needs to be built into the entire process from start to delivery. It's a system for the seamless transfer of a building from construction into full operation in a structured manner to an agreed program. And we're trying to move away from this traditional model where a design team comes to build, the construction team comes to build, another team comes to commission, and then they hand over to the FM to operate. This is traditional, this is what used to happen, and this is what needs to stop happening, okay? And this is what the operational readiness program prescribes. The FMs needs to have an input at every stage. So this is the model. This is what you need in addition to that development cycle to create your value proposition as a facility manager for why you should be involved. So you have to write down a few things that you do or that you will contribute into the project. While the project manager, the contractors, and the entire consulting team are busy delivering, you are just there as one of the consultants, whether in-house or outsourced, to ensure that the before or pre-development understanding of the users, understanding of the creation curve, and future, forecast of future trends with that facility is brought into the development cycle, and that you have all the data and information you will need to manage it effectively into the future when you finally take over at facility management stage. So let's take slide by slide breakdown of some of the things I have highlighted so far. At the design stage, the FM or the FM consultants should review the owner's project requirements and the basis of design documentation for clarity and completeness. Many times we have issues with contractors being expected to produce as-built drawings when there was no line item for as-built drawings documentation, right? I know that some contracts have perennials, they have contingencies, they have miscellaneous and all those funny things that come to the contract. You as a facility manager should look at it and see if as-built drawings have been factored in, because if it's not factored in and clearly specified, the contractors will be under no obligation, and they'll still spend that, discretionary spending money that you put in there on other things until you didn't pay for as-built drawings. Monitor the commissioning team, which includes quality assurance staff of main contractor and project consultants, and hold a pre-mobilization meeting. So what this means is that you ensure that commissioning is built into every stage, because sometimes some projects get to the end before you start talking of commissioning. Commissioning is the process of confirming adequacy, aligning with the owner's requirements, and ensuring that the operations and maintenance can be steady and the assets will not depreciate over time. That needs to be manned, and you as the FM to work with that person who is the commissioning coordinator. And then, of course, all of those team meetings that take place, operational meetings, commissioning meetings, just being there once a week, to just play your role will be very helpful. And then all of those designs I talked about, design drawings, drawings at construction, specification that comes out of these at various stages, the FM needs to have a look at it. There have been so many errors that could have been fixed at design stage. When you have a tea room next to a toilet, for example, who wants to drink tea that's coming from the next door to a smelly toilet? Or you have no provision for the cleaners to put their custodial supplies somewhere or even hang around. They start using under stairwells. Or you have facilities that has to be guarded around the clock, but they shut down during the evening and security guards don't have a toilet, to use. Or you have a 24-hour operations, a mall, a nightclub, any of those facilities, the airports, and you don't have changing rooms and showers provided for your technicians. All you just see in some of those designs is one hall and they'll say, this is maintenance office. So being able to look at these drawings will be very helpful for the owner and the construction team. Sometimes there are some features that are built into it and they end up to be like a critical feature that requires to do some maintenance on a regular basis. And there's no access to it unless you have to open up something, create an eyesore to access it regularly. There are so many things that designers design out of convenience, out of tradition, out of the way they always done it, out of convention, out of certain standards carried from certain industry to another industry. Oh, we just built a hotel. That's how we did it. Let's use the same concept to build an airport, right? So those kind of things happen with design teams. It's not their fault. They have never really experienced what they have been designing and building in the past. So they don't know. It's you that have been experiencing what they have been designing and building that needs to be here to look at those drawings. Okay? And then once the owner's objectives have been defined, you as a facility manager need to be sure that those objectives are not overlooked in various stages. Because sometimes out of convenience, out of the need to use a material that's readily available instead of delaying the whole project, we might decide to make a change and that change not consider its impact on a critical owner's objective. All right, so that needs to be looked at by the FM because you need to be the custodian of the owner's objective. Let me tell you the truth. The project team, from project manager down to all of the consultants and the construction workers, are all interested in three things: deliver the project on time, deliver it according to the scope, and on budget. We agree, it's fine. Quality, cost, and time, or scope, cost, and time. Those are the triple bottom line constraints that projects, all over the world try to meet with. But the fourth objective, operational readiness, is an FM's space because they really can't guarantee operational readiness no matter how much they talk about it because they do not experience facilities in their useful life. 2 to 3 years, they are done, they are gone, they moved on. You are going to live with it for 60, 100 years, okay? And then contract documents should include quality assurance and commissioning specifications. Everything that is done in the construction project requires time to implement, requires manpower to implement. Just writing all those large sentences in a contract that says contractor is obliged to do this, it has to do that, has to do that. We see all that in contracts, But when we get to the commercial, the line items, all of those specifications need to be represented in the commercial line item so that the controller can price them and include them in its cost. Because the controller can sign a dotted line and say, I accept this contract. All of those things you've listed in 20 pages of introduction and contract obligations that you've written out there, I'm happy to do them. Of course, I will do them, but you will pay for them. And because you do not capture those monies as part of the commercial line items, the controller will bill you at a higher rate than when they were competing for the job. You know, during competition for the job, everybody will give their best rates for everything. Anything you miss out, when the guy who has won the job is now the person who has a prerogative, there is no chance that you're going to get bids for work, inside work. They become pricey. As an FM, I'm not interested in all the other things they might have missed out that will create variations later. No, I'm interested in quality assurance line items. I'm very interested in that. And I'm sure that because of this, all the specifications that will be written for materials, for work methods, for equipment, you know, all those specifications, I will ensure that they are in order. I'll participate in value engineering and management reviews and make recommendations to resolve potential O&M problems. There might be time when engineers are trying to solve their problem quickly and create an O&M problem. After all, that problem will not be obvious until several years down the line. My presence will help create a balance. We can solve the problem without worrying about it with many options. But let's try and isolate options that is going to create more problems for us in the future. If you're not there, nobody thinks for you, nobody acts for you. And then the test procedures that are written, you know, at the early stages by consultants, ensure that they are actually produced. Many consultants are in projects today, and they just stroll around the projects, looking right and left, participating in meetings, and not really producing documentation. Once they've done their drawings and their first material schedules and specifications, they just come around and go, and they've not done detailed testing requirements. You must indicate all the operating parameters that must be met and testing requirements to confirm this, and make sure there's an alignment between what's been produced in commissioning to adequately meet the requirements of the owners and users. There are procedures for operational readiness, implementation, and integrate into contracts. At this stage, everything needs to be carefully thought through. Even the kinds of information that contractors and consultants provide for the various materials and the equipment that are supplied to site need to have an input. For example, insisting that serial numbers and model numbers specifications are captured in information that are delivered to the project management team for more transmission to you, the FM team, during construction is very key to your being able to have an asset register. Otherwise, they'll drop some things for you. You go to the sites to go and do asset register by going to look at nameplates and do measurements and testing to pick up data, and you may find discrepancies. If they know that this template is already set up, that you need to put so information, they will try as much as possible to align with what was specified for them. Okay. During construction, of course, commissioning activities and quality assurance activities should be carried out in a logical, sequential, and efficient manner. Of course, it's the project manager's job. I just need to be there as an observer, a contributor to the process, and ensuring that nobody comes to dump something I cannot manage on me later. And then the project plan, the master schedule that the contractors are going to be working with could easily miss out on quality assurance or commissioning activities. Just going through to be sure that line items have been, included. If not, they will take it on board if you tell them you didn't see commissioning activities and plans built into it. And then, of course, attend meetings, site visits and inspection. Just observe how things are being done, because that memory will serve you later. Be involved in commissioning tasks. This is very important. I mentioned this earlier. Work with design and construction teams to review submittals applicable to systems being commissioned for compliance with commissioning needs, and review change orders for impact on maintainability and client objectives. This last line item is very key for facility managers. Every time they are changing anything, make sure that the management of change that has been built into the project includes your review, so that they will not just be changing things and deviating and end up with something you cannot manage. Because from design, it looks like everything looks okay. You made all those inputs and everybody seems to have accepted it, and we seem to be happy with it, right? But during construction, a lot of things can change. And if you are not there, formally written into the management of change process as someone who needs to also have an input to make a review, then be ready to receive some serious malfunctioning assets at the point of delivery. Quality checks, witness commissioning processes, just generally observe things, checklists, review. Those one happens at the end of a project, where you do snag lists and checklists for systems, snag lists for features, and you're picking all that information, and you have a copy for tracking that each items on the snag list and checklist are being done. And then you have the issues log, all the issues encountered during the project, review every now and then, just to be sure that the issues are being recorded, are being sorted out, and the resolutions are also being recorded for your references. Warranties and guarantees, begin at this point to understand what has warranty, what doesn't, what the warranties, how long it runs, what it covers, and what are the exceptions in case somebody does A, B, C, what will notify the warranty. You know those ones up front. But if you don't, you'll have a big issue later, because you may take some action that will not be you ignorantly messing with your warranty. And then you facilitate and oversee the training of personnel, the operating personnel. This is your team. If I'm a consultant, I'll talk to myself to say, make sure the client's FIM and his team are trained properly. This is a job for consultants. Review the preparation of the O&M manuals for commission equipment and building components. All the O&M manuals. And the O&M manual is not just a manual that comes with the equipment to purchase that you find inside the carton. No, it includes all of the installation design, all of the materials used in setting it up, including series of maintenance requirements to run those assets. And then if building is done, post-construction stage, you are just ensuring that defect liability issues are taken care of. There's a period of defect liability after construction where the main contractor, and in some cases, some of the consultants, or all of the consultants' payments are held to a certain degree, a smaller percentage, 5% or so. The whole idea is that during this period, we don't expect a manufacturing defect, a construction defect to rear its head. Okay, if it does, we'll call the contractor and his consultant and his team to come and fix. And we will pay them their balance if after this defect liability period, they have fixed everything that shows up negatively, right? So the FM is the one that supervises this whole defect liability period, not the project manager. At this point, you've received the project, right? And so it is your call that will finally make that what we call the retention funds to be released. So a process where a project manager is still the one that comes to say, oh, well, good, let's pay this guy. It's an absurdity. It is the FM that is using the facility, that is experiencing the users, that is doing post-construction activities and surveys that should be able to call the shots at this point, all right? Because every time there's a defect, you raise a flag and somebody, project manager, takes on with contractors to get it fixed. So they must listen to you at the point where there's time to pick up their funds, okay? And then, of course, all of those final testing documentation, final commissioning reports is yours as a facility manager. And then, if you're going to outsource, select FM providers, develop specifications and service level agreements, monitor warranty compliance. This is very important to ensure that staff are not going to abuse the warranties, and that there is information on how the facility is being used and how the facility is meeting the requirements of its users, which we call continuous commissioning. Identify and solve problems or concerns with operating the building as originally intended. Make suggestions for improvement and for recording these changes in the O&M manuals. Identify areas that may come under warranty or under the original construction contract. Assist the FM staff in developing reports, documents, records, requests for service, work order system, all the whole startup kits, and ensure that the building is properly managed. We've talked about the FM information requirements, a list of documentation that you must have in place, whether for a new construction or for an old facility. Some of it are newly generated. So that's why we talk about the testing and commissioning documentation as your baseline. Okay, and all of those drawings, bills of quantities, material schedules, all of those things that come from construction, design, construction down to you, they're baseline. You start from them and you begin to generate the remaining items that you need on the list. List of vendors, their contracts, lease agreements, landlord contact information, financial data, historical data, utility bills, council requirements, IT requirements. All of these items on this list applies to old buildings as well as new buildings. If you take over a new building and you think that and you inherit a large utility bill for water, for electricity, and you didn't pick that up on time before project managers close the project, paid up contractors, the moment you move in as a JJC into that project, into that facility, the next thing the physics company will come in and dislocate your power, and you start running and crying foul, right? So all of these things are things you should have in place before you can say, I'm actually managing the facility. So we've covered the entire operational readiness program. Basically, you don't want documentation from your consultants and architects and contractors to come in all kinds of disjointed formats in Ghana must goes and folders and binders. They must all come in a format that is easily readable, that is easily retrievable. In fact, nowadays, you should have a document repository, well organized, so that you'll be able to set up your plant maintenance program, get access to essential documentation, and not waste time in accessing information that you need to make decisions, okay? So I'm going to look at the three components of the operational readiness, operational and maintenance program, testing and commissioning program, and the handover program. By going straight to, talked about all of this, going straight to what they contain, what is in each of these, all right? So look at the O&M program. What are the documentation that you should be targeting to have in place for your operations and maintenance? Asset schedule, which we call the asset register, operating manuals, all right? The maintenance schedules of PPM. So if you have the O&M manual, it's the same thing as having the operating manuals and the maintenance schedule. All your drawings must be in place, safety procedures, all right, and testing and equipment and tools, as well as your system or asset specifications, interfaces, parts list, recommended spare parts. And the testing and commissioning, of course, produces its own set of documentation. These are documents that goes into that process, what you use to do testing and commissioning, and that comes out as items that you must hand over to the FM as build drawings, bill of quantities, snag lists, GIS coordinates, vendor details, guarantees and warranties, manufacturer recommendations, legal documentation, all of those permits and all of those approvals, including the certificate of occupancy. All of that comes in under this and then you have the handover. We set out the rules of handover for plant systems and equipment and defines how the handover will be documented. The key components are, the documentation on how you certify job completion, documents that you receive as an FM, regulatory documents, warranty documents, defect list, training record, operational and maintenance manual, as build drawings, and test results. Okay. So as facility managers, if you don't have this privilege of participating at this stage or at this level in your project, then you need to think of how to set up reverse engineering processes where you go back and select a few critical documentation and try to generate them. For example, as build drawings can be generated by measuring and drawing, or 3D scanning of your spaces to produce drawings of spaces the way they are. You could also do circuit drawings for electrical by often on-in, checking, testing where things go to, and creating a sketch of how water flows and how electricity flows in a facility. So that's our lesson for today. There's an assessment that comes with this lesson. It's time now for us to have a discussion. Let me hear from you, your questions, your thoughts and comments. Okay, so let me hear from Moses.
Okay.
Evening.
Okay, no wahala.
Thank you for.
David, go ahead. Moses, go ahead.
Okay. You talk about defect liability. I know that defect liability is usually 1 year. So I just want to ask, is it precisely 1 year or depends on the contractual agreement?
Yes, it depends on the contractual agreement. So 6 months, actually.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Jude.
Yes, Mr. Paul, good evening, and good evening to the class.
Good evening, everybody. Good.
My question is on the list of documentation that need to be provided at the end of the project. I am currently preparing for the construction of some warehouses now, and we are at the stage where we are putting down the requirements that we expect from the design consultant. Will it be right for me to include asset register as part of the documentation that they have to give to me?
Asset register with specific things you want to come out of it. For example, in the asset register, you want to have.
So that means I have to
a schedule that has maybe quantities. Go on, Jude. Jude, go on.
Okay.
So asset register is one of them. The maintenance program for each asset is also part of what they should bring. In fact, compile a short list from those 3 lists in your slide, right? Make something simplified out of it, and then let him have it. For example, you need to have all warranty documentation, right?
Hello, Mr. Paul. I'm sorry, I lost you completely there. I didn't just hear you at all.
Oh, okay. You need to include assets register with specifically stating the properties of each asset that you want. You want the quantities, you want their specification, you want their capacities, you want their whatever it is, list it and say, this is what I want for every asset in the asset register.
Okay, all right.
And then other things in those three lists, the O&M program, the handover program, the testing and commissioning program, pick out other things and add to it. For example, you need to have warranty documentation for everything, right? You need to have permits and licenses for everything, okay? You need to have, you know, all the things that are critical in these three lists, because you can't get everything from them. But when you give them a long list, they will come back to you and tell you, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, right? Then you now say, but I want this information. How do I get it? Should I put somebody on embedded in your team who is going to be helping me to get this information and gathering it? They will say yes. Then you sponsor that move into the project. Because the whole idea is to operate in a seamless way in the future, so you don't have issues, okay?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tosin.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Thank you for the class today, sir. I would like to know if the facility manager can double as the project manager.
Oh, yes,
okay.
He can. So for small projects, the FM can become the project manager of it. If the project becomes very large, the project manager responsibility can now overwhelm an FM who has operational tasks and activities. That's when we don't encourage the FM to be the project manager, right? But if it's a project that is not too large, you should always be the project manager yourself. That way, all of these things I'm talking about, you will have more authority to talk to contractors and the project team and construction team on how to deliver them.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Innocent.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, class. My question is basically centered around the fact that there are instances where it's not possible or it's difficult to have as-built.
Yes.
Either because of challenges or issues revolving around construction or organizations that don't have continuity.
Yeah.
And then probably the project manager was changed occasionally, or there is that person that should have the history of construction is not available, because an as-built drawing that is not detailed or does not have the right information, is as good as the as-built is not even existing. So what's the alternative option in cases where there's no as-built that a facility manager have to work with? What alternative option
reverse engineer the process. Reverse engineer the process, which means create a project to go and measure and draw, count and write, look at nameplates and collect data and create a spreadsheet. Okay, so that's a project in itself. If the data and information is not available, you must create it.
And then in cases where certain pipes are already buried, certain pipes are probably concealed. How do
So I explained, I said, if you cannot, because you can't do destructive checks to identify where things are buried or concealed, right? But at least do circuit flow diagrams, right? Diagrams that show this is going from this point to this point and move from this point to that point. There's a kind of pipe that runs from here to here. It's 2-inch multi-layered pipe. This other one is galvanized. It's 10 mm or whatever dimensions you have. So the idea is you must create some form of documentation that gives you an idea of what is available on your buildings. Because you may not be able to break up all walls and see everything, right? But you should be able to know how operationally something moves from. Take, for example, how your water flows from the overhead tank, for example. It goes through to
From
every
the ground
floor.
tank to the overhead.
Exactly, and so exactly, you must be able to create such a flow, because it's always somebody trying to troubleshoot a problem tomorrow. They should be able to use that to flow diagrams, you know, to know where to break if they have to break.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right, thanks everybody. Hope you had a good time. See you again on Wednesday. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Mr. Paul, good evening. Please, I need your chat with you. If you can open your chat, I just need your number. I have something to discuss with you after the class, please, sir.
Oh, okay. You put it on this chart here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I didn't implement.
080-220-20122.
080. Okay, sir. Thank you.
220-20122.
220-122. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes,
all right. Thanks. Have a nice evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye, sir.